Yep. It appears we're having some problem with the microphones, or I'm sorry, my soundboard. So let's just move on right now. Caleb Calhoun, how are you, sir?
I am good. How are you doing today, Dave?
Never better. Merry Christmas, by the way.
Merry Christmas to you. And happy Hanukkah to anybody who's celebrating it. Happy Kwanzaa, Happy New Year, happy winter solstice to the pagans who still celebrate Saturnalia. Yeah, just throwing out all the holidays.
You say some things at times that just are amazing, that you have that sort of who celebrates the winter solstice again?
The Romans did. It was Saturnalia. They celebrated. They worshipped the god of Saturnalia, and this winter solstice was the shortest day of the year. That's what they celebrated.
Okay, well, I think it's very obvious he's the smart one. With Caleb Calhoun, I'm Dave Hooker. We have a huge show lined up today that we're looking forward to, and that will include, was the 2024 season a disappointment or a success? I'm going to ask you once to answer that question, and they're very different ends of the spectrum. I realize that. We're not giving any gray area. Oh, it was kind of good. So if you can go ahead and post that on the YouTube page, I'd greatly appreciate that. 4 downs coming up. Why the Vols seem so far behind Ohio State personnel-wise, as they did. Did Ohio State break Tennessee's will? We're going to visit with Jacob Warren a little bit later in the program. What the H? This day in Tennessee sports history. How big of a factor was Dylan Samson's injury at Ohio State? I think it was monstrously huge, but it's just a running back. So we'll discuss. Bigger impact on recruiting for Tennessee, getting blown out, or the Vols filling up the horseshoe. And they did, and they supported, and it's a sign that the program is on the correct path. Stat of the day, as Tennessee football hit its ceiling under Josh Heupel. That'll tie back into our offensive line comment. And also, did the horrible first-round college football playoffs prove expansion was necessary? But we definitely want to go to your post as well. As Caleb, this is part of the reaction that you have when Tennessee is when they go to Ohio State and don't perform the way that you thought they would. That's disappointing.
Yeah, it is. It's definitely a letdown. I'm sure Tennessee, if you're Tennessee, you I don't think you expected to lose like that. It was 42-17. It kind of reminded me, and maybe this is a good sign for Tennessee because what happened the next year, but it felt exactly like that Nebraska game in '97, Peyton Manning's last game, didn't it? Where Tennessee just they get there, they finally win the SEC title, they go play for the national title, and they just look like they aren't even in the same stratosphere as Nebraska that day.
Okay, so tell me if you can hear this, Caleb, because we're having a bit of we've had a power surge here. Can you hear the scary music?
Yes, the board is back.
Awesome, the board is back.
Today's tough question. Take a side. Take a stand. The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of offthehooksports.com.
Sweet Lord, what are we doing here? All right, today's tough question is pretty simple. Was Tennessee's, and if you can put this on the poll question on YouTube, I'd appreciate it, was Tennessee's 2024 season a success or a failure? Brought to you by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. Caleb, you only have to pick one. You can't be in between. So you pick one.
It was a failure. I'm sorry, guys. The 2024 season was a failure. I predicted a national title in 2024 all the way back in 2022 before the season started. I wouldn't have called it a failure if they didn't win the national title. But to get bounced out in the first round of the college football playoff, when you thought this program had taken it, you thought 2022 was a stepping stone for greater things to come. It's a letdown. It is. I mean, I have to say, Dave, after looking at this season, not only was 2022 not a stepping stone, 2022 was better than this team. Honestly, I'm starting to think. And I didn't say that in the middle of the year because I thought this team's defense was better. But now I'm starting to question, did Tennessee, we talk about mega conferences with schedule imbalances. It looked like Tennessee got into the playoff because they benefited from a schedule imbalance in the SEC where they only played 2 of the good teams in the conference that year. I mean, I
want to argue with that because it's the way things go. You know, it's kind of like if you get pulled over. I mean, that's the way things go. I want to argue with that, but I can't. The schedule was pathetic. And I'm not talking about non-conference opponents, just when they caught people at the right time after a bye week or down on their dauber, whatever the case may be. It just seemed like things played out for Tennessee to win more so than what they did on the field. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's totally fair. And I totally agree with you. And nothing came of it. And so I think that, I mean, they called what should have been a demoralized Ohio State team after the whole Ryan Day debacle. They called Arkansas when they were after a bye and Arkansas was reeling. They called Alabama when Alabama was somewhat reeling because of the Vanderbilt loss. They called Georgia when Georgia was coming off the Ole Miss loss. And I mean, they couldn't cash in on any of those except the Alabama game, and they barely won that one at home. And so when I break this down, when I look at it, I say, look, I'm sorry. I think that this Tennessee team, given what we thought, let's rewind a little bit less than a year ago, because we're less than a year removed from Nico's first start in the Citrus Bowl against Iowa.
Yes.
Dave, let's be honest. When we saw that Nico that performed in the Citrus Bowl against Iowa, we were all thinking much bigger things for the offense this year than what we saw.
Yeah, I was befuddled by people that said, oh, they'll just win 8 or 9 games. I never got that. I thought this was a 10-win team from the beginning. And whatever you think about the disappointment, so I'll weigh in on my disappointment talk, as you have. You call it a disappointment. And some of that's expectations, right? You had Nico winning the Heisman. You had to win the national championship. So by your definition, that is indeed a failure. That's a disappointment. I won't argue with you with that. But I thought they would be a solid 10-win season and make a run in the college football playoff. Well, is one game a run? I don't know. It's not 64 teams like basketball, so I'm not sure. But I felt like they got respect from the college football playoff to some extent. I felt like they established themselves as a national championship contender. I believe there are 3 tiers at the top of the top 25 or so. And I think that's the first tier that can win the championship. And we discussed this on Saturday night. But I think there are a couple of teams. Georgia obviously won. And then there's a second tier that if things broke right, they could win a championship. And there's a last tier, you got no shot. I think Tennessee has gone from in 4 years to got no shot to got a shot. So I can't call this a disappointment. I can't do that. The program brought to you in part by our good friends Banks and Jones, T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com. Caleb, I want your retort on that. Then we'll go to the message board here momentarily with Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. Why Banks and Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks and Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks and Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks and Jones. T. Scott Jones. All right, so Caleb, let me be real clear here. I told you why I don't think this is a disappointment, but you actually started off the topic with, is this a disappointment? So keep rolling. Let me hear you feel about Tennessee losing to Ohio State, not only the way they lost, but in the fashion they lost.
Okay, so here's where I'm in league with you. There's 2 types of ways to judge talent, which is the personnel across the board and then the quarterback, right? Like difference in quarterback, that's like a separate type of talent to judge for teams, isn't it?
Yes.
I felt across the board personnel, Tennessee was what you said they were. They could win a national title if things break right. But then I thought the quarterback play would be so good that by itself would elevate Tennessee to they can just straight up win a national title.
I think where you misstepped, if I may, and I respect your opinion. I think we both may have misstepped a little bit. You more than me. We saw how bad Joe Milton was last year, and we expected that you could just plug a guy in and he'd be Hendon Hooker in 2022. And I think what we learned is that's not the case.
That's not the case, but that's a disappointment that it's not the case because I watched Nico in the Polynesian Bowl. I saw the throws he can make. Nico,
I love you, but there's not a lot of pressure in the Polynesian Bowl.
No, there's not. That's true. But I will say that Nico, I'm just going to say that more than Hendon Hooker, Nico can make every single throw from the pocket. And I particularly his deep ball. He's got the best deep ball. He's got the most beautiful deep ball of anybody.
No, he doesn't. I mean, Hendon Hooker has the most accurate deep ball, according to one NFL scout. He said that I may have ever scouted in 25 years. So there's a special touch to that. Let's not just downgrade Hendon.
Even if Nico's deep ball's a little bit less than Hendon Hooker, when you add in the fact that he can make every throw over the middle too. I mean, you open up an entire level of the offense that Nico should have been able to run that Hendon Hooker couldn't do. And it didn't reveal itself this year. Now, part of this, and look, I'll say this, part of this, Josh Heupel's got to go back to the drawing board. And maybe Joey Halsey's not the guy to do this. But teams have, I didn't think that they were going to be able to figure out Tennessee's offense. And I don't know where the bigger disappointment is. So I'm trying to figure this out. Is it Nico, or is it the fact that, one, the receivers were not fast enough to get separation this year? And I thought they easily would be. And they were all big disappointments in this game.
No, most disappointing factor of this season to me might be receivers, because actually it is receivers. I don't even think it's close, because I had questions about the offensive line that had its ups and downs. I had questions about the secondary that they rebuilt and did a fantastic job on doing that. I still, though, however, was gung-ho about the receivers, which included a guy that had transferred and coming off a bad injury, another guy coming off an injury that hadn't performed last year. I still, though, believe that if we say that Squirrel White's 100% healthy, there's not a concern about the receivers. Would you agree or disagree with that?
That if Brew McCoy didn't lose a bit of a step from breaking his leg, that could have helped too. Both of those things kind of hurt. It felt like, I'm just going to say it this way, it felt like Josh Heupel was forcing out receivers who were you've talked about this with Squirrel White. He was forcing out receivers who were banged up because they were getting on the first team reps. And in reality, he should have set them and forced out and given Mike Matthews and Dante Thornton those first team reps.
Now, wait a second. Ultimately, it's all in Josh Heupel, right?
Yeah, it is.
Okay. But you said something that's a little curious there. You said he's in charge of continuing to send them out. Usually in charge of substitutions is the position coach, which brings us back to, did they hire a position coach because they wanted to keep things in-house? And has he done a great or a good job? Because we thought great job after he coached the Biletnikoff winner.
Yes.
But we don't know the great job. I don't know that he's done a great job now. Do you?
No, I don't. We're 2 years in now. And last year we put it all on Joe Milton, but now we're putting it. It could be the bad luck of injuries, and Kelsey Pope was just trying to make the receivers that he had work that had been, whether or not they were fully healthy. He was trying to force them to work.
Well, let's look at this for a second before we start giving Kelsey Pope his bouquets, which everybody did after the Biletnikoff winner and Jalen Hyatt. Let's look at this. What if he's just had a bleep ton of talent?
I mean, that's not revealing itself with Hyatt in the NFL, though.
Well, but okay, fair. But I have seen at times programs that they will have one good group when they're rebuilding. And it's not their plan. They want to be good all over. But a guy like Josh Heupel is better coaching a receiver or a quarterback. So it's just naturally going to fall that way. So, I mean, that's my question. I mean, what's been more disappointing, the receivers or anybody else?
Definitely the receivers, even more than the tackles, because the tackles, as you bring up, have played on sprained ankles this year. I don't think we expected the tackles to be a strength of Tennessee's this year. We just thought they could be serviceable, but we thought the receivers would be a giant weapon. And
can I say something based off a conversation I had within Tennessee's program?
Sure.
Lance Hurd's going to be all ACC, and his start to the season was because of that ankle. I know he didn't play perfectly on Saturday, but I'm just telling you, being a fairly big guy, when you sprain an ankle, it doesn't go away soon. I think we were both, you, me, and our audience, a little bit hard on him at times. 4 Downs brought to you by Medicare Misty.
4 Downs. 4 questions. 4 answers. The Dave Hooker Show.
4
Downs. A presentation of OffTheHookSports.com.
Let's go ahead and make this a poll question if we can, Caleb, if you don't mind. We're going to get to 4 downs, and 4 downs consist of this. What is your biggest concern of Tennessee's loss at Ohio State. We're going to get to not enough depth, poor talent evaluation by Josh Heupel, play calling, and the moment was just too big. All right, so we'll set that poll question right now. We want to get you on board. Again, 4 Downs brought to you by Medicare Misty. The last poll question finished as this, and I'm proud of you, those that voted no. Was the 2024 season a disappointment? No. 37%. Yes, it was a disappointment. Just don't see that. Now, Christine says, Hype is not an SEC coach, never was, will be quit steadily, easily. Huh? What? I don't know if he's going to quit. He gets a big buyout. But I don't have any question that Josh Heupel is still a championship caliber coach. Do you?
No, I think he's a championship caliber coach. I think he may be a little bit too stubborn in believing in things. I'm going to say this. I think there's a chance he believes in himself too much. And he felt that he could just look with, I think I'll say this. I think with the promotion from Alex Golesh to Joey Halzle, he has gone from a collective of an offensive game plan with him and Golesh to it's his game plan and Halzle just is his puppet running the show. Kind of like, it's almost like you brought it up. It feels like a Cutcliffe to Sanders moment, doesn't it? Where Sanders just really ran the game plan Fulmer wanted, didn't he? Pretty much.
No, David pretty much had he had his free reign.
No, David did. I know, but I'm saying Randy Sanders really was never going to deviate from anything Fulmer wanted, was what I was talking about, right?
No, absolutely not.
Yeah. Doesn't it feel that way with Halzle? He's not going to deviate from anything Heupel wanted, whereas Golesh was actually going to bring in a different perspective in game planning.
And I talked to somebody within the program, and they said that Joey Halzle would literally break down the game in like 5 different methods, like as opposed to this team wanted to do this defensively or that. I mean, I think what I'm hearing is he kind of can be a savant. So, I mean, I'm not saying that's the reason they struggled. It is Josh Heupel's responsibility in offense. 4 Downs brought to you by Medicare Misty.
4 Downs. 4 questions. 4 answers. The Dave Hooker Show.
4
Downs. A presentation of offthehooksports.com.
Well, I'll say one other thing, too, that we're not mentioning enough is how much does this step and just the maturity of the upperclassmen help Tennessee and not being a disappointment? I think it's pretty significant. All right, Coop, what should we do before we get to 4 Downs?
Cooper Mays here. Hit like and subscribe.
All right. Thank you, Coop. By the way, this afternoon, City Heat and Air Conditioning, cityheatandair.com will have a Vol report with City Heating and Air Conditioning. So let's go with down 1. Coop, what do you got?
Coop here. First down.
All right. Why did the Vols seem so far behind Ohio State personnel-wise? Because they did. First down is this. Not enough depth. Caleb?
Yeah, and this was one of the things that was very notable within the program. And I think I'm not even going to call this a disappointment because I thought in a lot of positional issues outside of quarterback, this was still always going to be where Tennessee was behind Ohio State, which is that, Tennessee loses a weapon, a skill player weapon, which we'll talk about later in the show because they did. They can't replace it. Ohio State loses Jeremiah Smith. They can go to Carnell Tate. They can go to about 5 receivers if they want to. I mean, Ohio State, they still are, because they've been at a high level for so long, and because they're in Ohio, even in the NIL age, they still are a factory for just plugging and play guys.
Like Tennessee was in the late 90s and early 2000s.
Yeah,
it was
exactly.
Just like you never really, I mean, they said next man up, and that's kind of a coaching term that you giggle at a little bit. But when they say next man up, the next man might be pretty darn good. The next man's Travis Stevens.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
That's where you need to be. So I find this interesting that you asked this question at our 3:45 a.m. production meeting. I believe that that's the difference. And I'm going to go further than just what you said. I believe that Lance Hurd and John Campbell Jr. being beat up at the beginning of the year where they had to play him, didn't have any other options. I believe that's the difference. So overall depth, I don't know what 3 downs you got for me coming forward, but that's going to be tough to top. Talk to me, Cooper.
Cooper Mays here. Second down.
All right, what's next, Caleb?
All right, second down. Is there a concern of poor talent evaluation by Josh Heupel?
I have zero concern on that. I have concern about where he puts his personnel. I have zero concern about his evaluation. I know he's taken a lot of 3-star offensive linemen that haven't panned out, but I think that's because they didn't have an option. So that would be zero concern to me.
See, I think it's a bigger concern. We just talked about the receivers being an issue. That seems like poor talent evaluation by Josh Heupel.
They look talented to me. They just don't look like they've always been in the right spot.
They look like a step slow to me. All of them. Now, Squirrel White was banged up this year.
Well, God bless Brew. I mean that was a serious injury. To ever expect that you're going to run the same speed after that sort of injury is probably not going to happen. He looks a step slower, and I'm not trying to knock on him, Caleb, but that's just a fact.
Yeah, I agree.
And a guy that didn't really rely on his speed in the first place.
Right. No, that's a very good point. And I felt the same way. And so it seemed like he missed on that. I mean, the lack of depth at offensive line does seem like it's because of him missing on guys. I mean, I'm sorry, guys, but it's mind-boggling to me. I want to keep repeating it because I don't think we realize how much of a standout stat this is. That Josh Heupel just completed his 4th year as Tennessee's head coach, and he has yet to start an offensive lineman that he signed out of high school. That has never. I'm willing to go out on a limb and say that's never happened to a head coach at any college football program in history. To go 4 full years and not start one offensive lineman that you signed out of high school.
Well, somewhere there's Jackie Sherrill in his snakeskin boots. He loves his JUCO range. That's a real possibility. What down, Coop?
Here. 3rd down.
You like my boots there, don't you? Play calling was the biggest issue in the game. I didn't really have a problem with play calling because I think there's sometimes you get too out physical and too outmatched and too out coached and too out schemed, which they did, where it looks like play calling, but it's really not.
How about if you combine play calling with game planning?
Okay, well, that's a different. Okay, then you've changed my mind completely. That would almost be 50-50 with not enough depth because the game plan was absolutely horrible. To not go after Will Howard more often was absolutely horrible. I'm sorry, to rely too early on the passing game when you should have established the run. I know Dylan Samson was a factor, and we'll talk about that later, but that to me was getting out coached. And I agree. And sorry to interrupt one more time. They got outflanked a lot of times on defense, and then they got misdirected a lot of times on defense. Why are your guys not at game 13 of the season not reading their keys? I didn't understand that at all.
I think because Tim Banks' schemes are so vertical based, I think Ohio State was very aware of that going in, and they knew every one of the tendencies of Tennessee's defense. And that you got to give Chip Kelly credit. I mean, he devised a perfect game plan. And I think that if you notice, guys, Tennessee was getting beat on misdirection, even though they weren't bringing pressure. They were trying to prepare for the misdirection. Ohio State kind of caught that, and they noticed a lot of times, if I can get the safety to hesitate here, I got one-on-one over here, and my guy's going to win every time. That was Chip Kelly's philosophy, basically. It reminds me of, all right, here's a great random X's and O's example. Do you remember the 2004 SEC title game, Dave? I'm sure you covered it, where Tennessee put up a fight against that undefeated Auburn team?
Yes.
Tommy Tuberville led. Remember when they had something on film where they realized that because Auburn's so vertical with their defense, every handoff they would give, they would then fake a reverse right after that just to hesitate the defense for like 2 seconds. And then Gerald Riggs would have a clean house to a touchdown every single time.
Yeah.
And that seems like that's what Ohio State did. It was, let's make them think we're going to do a misdirection here. That was half of it, was just giving up the idea of a misdirection, hoping Tennessee's end hesitates just enough so Will Howard has time, and the safety hesitates, and they got one-on-one the other way. They kept doing that.
No argument there. 4th down brought to you by Medicare Misty. Tennessee looking forward. What do we say after 30 seconds for Medicare Misty?
I've been in business actually 19 years this year. I've been in the community since 1993. You're getting a lot of information. Unlike when you were working, they made the choice for you. Now you have to make the choice. Come to us and let us help you make it easy. Call Medicare Misty, MedicareMisty.com or 423-777-5577. Let us help them sleep at night.
And we call her Medicare Misty.
All SEC center Cooper Mays here. 4th down.
All right, 4th down is this, Caleb Calhoun. The moment was just too big.
So on principle, I would normally say no. The moment's not too big. I think, can I throw out though, Dave, that the combination of how maybe Vol Nation behaved leading up to the game made the moment too big, because the whole coming out without your shirts on, the whole Tennessee takeover of the horseshoe, Ohio State on the other side is wanting to play and rally for Ryan Day because of what happened. All of that stuff, it seemed like the minute things got a little bit tough early for Tennessee, I got to be honest, Dave, it looked like their will just broke. And I haven't seen that in a while, but it felt like Ohio State snatched their hearts out of them.
No, I did. I think some of that too is the length of the season. So I can't help but wonder if they were ground down. I mean, you shouldn't be right now, but let's face it, a win over Vanderbilt, as you pull away from the Commodores, is not nearly the emotional impact of a loss to Michigan. So if anybody had the psychological impact in this game, in retrospect, it was definitely Ohio State.
No, it was. And I want to address this because Adam asked if I'm blaming the fans for the poor showing. No, the fans did a great job showing up. I'm talking about the talking that was being done. The whole, we're going to not just take over the horseshoe, but we're going to tear down the goalpost if they win. We'll plant the flag at midfield. There was a lot of talk making fun of Ohio State guys. And when things go just a little bit south from the team doing all the talking, it can go really south. Look, this is Tennessee 2 years ago. What happened? Eric Angel, Sanford Stadium's not that loud. Tennessee's going to go in, and Georgia's no match for the receivers on the outside. And Georgia just broke their will just so easily in that game. And my thing is, when you do a lot of talking, and I don't know if you agree with this, Dave, but the team that does a lot of talking, if they don't back it up early, they're going to wilt beneath the pressure because they realize they put a lot of pressure on themselves.
Agreed. And I hate this saying, oh, you got to get out to a fast start, because nobody says I want to go down 21-0. But let's face it, their fan base and their team, and Tennessee did not need, but the rest of everybody involved needed a strong early showing by the Buckeyes.
They did. They needed that strong early showing. And I think, again, the combination of all the hype and the strong early showing by Ohio State and the fact that it was a college playoff game, am I being unfair to question this team's mental toughness by saying all of that moment was too big? I mean, this was the most meaningful game Tennessee's played on a national stage in 23 years.
Yeah, I would debate that it's not a mental toughness issue. It's more of a depth issue. Okay. I mean, what happens when John Campbell Jr. goes out? Dane Davis comes in. No offense to Dane Davis, but come on.
No, you're right. And look,
they're not. They bragged about having 12 defensive linemen that were fantastic and SEC worthy. Do they have 6 on the offensive line?
No, I don't think so. And you are right. And Travis is absolutely right. Jermon McCoy got exposed more than anything. I kept asking, is Jermon McCoy the best corner Tennessee's had in a long time? And he got torched by Jeremiah Smith. To be fair, a lot of that was the misdirection and the safety getting hesitating on the misdirection play calling. And so Jermon McCoy is oftentimes left out on an island. I don't care how good of a corner you are. If you're not getting pressure and you're left on an island with an All-American receiver, you're losing that battle 100% of the time, aren't you?
The thing that concerned me with Jermon McCoy is some of his body language.
Yeah.
It just seemed like he was frustrated with the rest of his team and not himself enough. Does that make sense?
The will broke. Ohio State literally, he's the premier guy of Ohio State, broke his will. Just snatched the hearts out from Tennessee. And I think within two drives, Tennessee started to think, oh, we're not talented enough to compete with these guys. And I think that showed.
Sports Treasures carrying over 5 million sports treasures and so much more. Follow on Facebook for the best sports memorabilia daily updates. If you go to Facebook, sportstreasuresTN.com, sportstreasuresTN.com. Also want to thank our friends at the UPS store Arden Valley, helping individuals and small businesses with a wide range of products and services locally owned and operated. The link is right down below. Stay tuned. Coming up, we'll visit with Jacob Warren. We always look forward to that. Also on the program, we'll continue to dissect what happened in Columbus on Saturday, because it wasn't real pretty. This day in Tennessee sports history as well. I believe this season is a success, no matter what happened in Columbus. Caleb vehemently disagrees with us. We'll make that the next poll question of the show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com.
I've been in business actually 19 years this year. I've been in the community since 1993. You're getting a lot of information. Unlike when you were working, they made the choice for you. Now you have to make the choice. Come to us and let us help you make it easy. Call Medicare Misty, MedicareMisty.com or 423-777-5577. Let us help them sleep at night.
And we call her Medicare Misty.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Neubert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Neubert Collision Center.
Why Banks & Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott Jones. BanksandJones.com. Dave Hooker here for Dynasty Pools and Spas, your home for the best spas and everything you need to jump right in. Relaxing, therapeutic, absolutely. But what sets Dynasty Pools and Spas apart from others is that you get everything with any spa purchase. You get the cover lift, the steps, delivery, and chemicals. When Dynasty Pools and Spas delivers your spa from their Athens location within 125 miles, you'll get your own personal hydrotherapy spa. Mention me, Dave Hooker, or Off the Hook Sports, and get $500 off your top quality new spa. Dynasty Pools and Spas, just off the Athens exit. Drop in and receive a free gift from Off the Hook Sports, Dynasty Pools and Spas. Mention Off the Hook Sports for a drop-in prize and that $500 discount, Dynasty Pools and Spas. To check out some of the Dynasty Spa models and to buy spa chemicals, go to DynastyPoolsandSpas.com. Dynasty Pools and Spas.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, BanksJones.com.
You're listening to The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of OffTheHookSports.com.
The internet is full of pictures of each and every one of you.
Available on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Off the Hook Sports app. Download now for free.
Is there nothing you people can't do?
Also available on OffTheHookSports.com.
Welcome back. Portions of the program brought to you by our good friends at the Hemp House. If you haven't been there, then you need to do so, and you can order it all online as well. The Hemp House is absolutely fantastic. Top quality ingredients. Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com, the premier hemp dispensary online with a wide variety of great selection and strict standards. Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com. Use the promo code HOOKED. That's HOOKED for 10% off. All right, Caleb Calhoun, we continue to dissect the Tennessee loss to, I want to say Oklahoma, Ohio State. That wouldn't sound right. Where are we at our poll question now? Where do we stand?
What's the biggest concern from Tennessee's loss at Ohio State? Not enough depth. Heupel's poor talent evaluation. Play calling. Moment was too big. Do you want me to give the results now, or do you want to wait?
Lay it on me, brother.
Not enough depth leads with a plurality at 33%. Play calling is at 25%. The moment was too big at 24%, and Heupel's poor talent evaluation at 18%. So very split. Massive disagreement.
Yeah, that tells me there's a lot of concerns about Josh Heupel right now, which I think are a little bit premature. What the H is brought to you by our good friends at Dynasty Pools and Spas.
What the? What was he thinking?
Release the hounds.
The Dave Hooker Show.
Keep cool.
A presentation of OffTheHookSports.com.
All right, I'm about to make a crazy statement. Are you ready, Caleb?
Ready.
All right. This season is a massive success despite what happened in the shoe on Saturday. Do you agree or disagree? I know because we're at our 3:45 a.m. production meeting. I know what you're thinking, but I want to hear it.
Oh, I totally disagree. It's not a massive success. It's a disappointment.
Ouch.
Total disappointment.
Why is it a disappointment then?
Oh, just because I think that the expectations, I think, for Tennessee, I thought Tennessee had the personnel to go compete for a national title and maybe win one if things broke their way. And I thought the reason was it may be a little bit less than the powerhouses, but I thought they had the quarterback and the passing game to make up for it.
Yep. Dylan says throw away the current portal approach, 2 or 3 quality starters, McCoy, Kitzelman, and Moy, and it doesn't cut it in modern college football if you're only going to bring in recruiting classes in the top 15 to 10, top 10 to 15 range. That brings me to this, though, Caleb. I'm going to argue still that it's a success because of the exposure you got, which helps you not only in recruits. I used to say that was my old go-to, but also in NIL guys that are asked to dig open their pockets.
Yes, I could understand, and that's a fair point with the college football playoff. And I mean, maybe getting blown out. I mean, I'm not going to I don't know. I don't want to go to crazy Caleb conspiracies here, but maybe that would give Josh Heupel leverage to go to the boosters and say, "Hey guys, you want to take the next step? I need more money," and we could see if that happens. But
and it's kind of always like the economy, isn't it? I heard somebody talking on the radio the other day that said, well, I can't wait for these grocery prices to come down. Caleb, I'm a little bit older than you. They don't go down. They stay at the same. They go through inflation, and then they stay at the same, and then you get used to it, and hopefully your paycheck goes up. So it kind of reminds me of that situation a little bit.
It's funny you say that. You're right. It's when people are like, I'm going to bring groceries down. I'm like, guys, if the prices go down, you're going to cause a recession. Like, they only go down if there's a recession. You don't want that. What you want is the wages to outpace the growth in prices. So You're right. You want your paycheck to go up, not prices to go down. So that's why I'm sorry. I just have to say that this season may have been a success because of that with the NIL money to say, hey guys, we need more money. We need more money to get these players, and Heupel and Tennessee probably could do that. And he can at least show the blueprint of, look, I got us to the playoff this year, but I need more. I put it. Let me ask you this. If NIL exists in 2016, 2015, you think Butch Jones could have gone to the boosters in 2017 and said, I need more NIL money?
That would have been,
it would have, yeah, they'd have been like, absolutely not. Heupel can at least show, this is what I've done so far with more money. This is what I can do.
Yep. Timothy with a super chat. Again, that goes to Quincy Calhoun's college fund. We're happy for Quincy. With the portal, every year you're building a team that you can't build a program like you did with Majors and Fulmer. Okay, I think that we're oversimplifying this a little bit because every other program is doing this too, right?
Yes, I agree.
So the idea is to do it better and to have talent evaluators there. If I were Josh Heupel, and this is completely legal, I would go hire an NFL scout for an exorbitant amount of money and have him be my scout. Now, that's weird to do for a man who believes that he knows ball as well as anybody, and it would be a terrible struggle for him to do that. But I think that some talent evaluations, and the secondary was great this year, okay? But last year they weren't great, and they weren't great the year before that. I think he could use an extra hand in the office that gives him a real talent evaluation, which actually speaks to the promotion in-house philosophy that he has. I mean, are they bringing new ideas to the table? I don't know.
No, and that was the problem. They were bringing new ideas to the table when he was at UCF and he was having to put his own staff together and he was bringing in new guys. He brought in Jeff Levy, then he brought in Alex Golish. But since he's been at Tennessee on the offensive side, he's wanted to do in-house. And I'm with you. I think it's kind of time to stop doing that with him. And I think there's and you see this in other ways. You've seen this in the past. You've seen coaches with a level of arrogance on their side that I mean, I'm not comparing Josh Heupel to Jeremy Pruitt, but Dave, I don't know if you remember when Jeremy Pruitt first took over Tennessee, he wanted to call the plays on defense. And then he was like, okay, I need to hire somebody, but then he would micromanage him too much. There was you were there, you were closer to the program, but if I remember correctly, Derek Dooley, one of his biggest problems was, didn't he micromanage his entire staff where he thought he was smarter than everybody else?
Way overboard, yeah.
Yeah.
To the point that Chuck Smith, I think, wanted to beat the hell out of him.
Well, we probably should have micromanaged Chuck Smith.
Well, he tried. I mean, he ran through the office screaming, "Where's Dooley? Where's Dooley?" And Dooley didn't show up.
No, really? Did that happen?
Yes, that happened.
Oh my gosh, that's really funny. So yes, I think that I think I think Heupel's arrogance in believing he wants guys that are going to like just stick with his system is kind of hurting him. He's not getting new voices in the room, and it's a problem with coaches as they get more successful. I feel like the only ones who that's worked out for, because Nick Saban hired new staff all the time, but I felt like the new staff members he hired, he always looked for new offensive or defensive minds in the room, right? He wanted guys that were going to bring new ideas, didn't he?
Yep, absolutely. All right, so let's get to what the H. I want to get Caleb's thoughts on where Tennessee goes next year. Does this, he's been as optimistic as anybody. So where does Tennessee go next year? With Caleb Calhoun, I'm Dave Hooker, Off the Hook Sports, presented in part by our good friends at Double D Piping.
Double D Piping provides full-service fire protection on any scale. From residential homes to government facilities, we can assist any customer through design, fabrication, installation, inspection, and demonstration of fire suppression systems. With 30 years of service across 5 states and a full staff with over 40 years experience, our quality can't be beaten. Don't get caught watching what you could have prevented. Call Double D Piping.
All right, so what does this mean for your opinion of 2025, Caleb?
Well, I think that, and we'll talk about it in a little while on what Tennessee has to do to reach that next level if they've hit their ceiling. But I think the key is restore your offensive line depth. That's the first one. Is restore your offensive line depth. And so, and Dave's got a great column on that, guys, if you want to read it. We'll talk about it later in the show, but yeah, that's the big thing. You can't have this thin level of depth.
This news just coming across, well, it was actually yesterday, but Christian Harris, son of NFL great Rodney Harris, has decided to transfer. Harrison, excuse me. This is a little bit of a head scratcher to me.
Yeah. You know what? You're right. And let's actually stick on this for a minute. So Christian Harrison, son of Rodney Harrison, in the transfer portal. He didn't he get hurt this year? I feel like, or no, did he fill in for another injury? But yeah,
he filled in for Boo at times.
Yeah, he did. He did fill in for Boo. You're right. And he actually saw a lot of action. With Jacoby Thomas probably leaving, I felt that he was going to take another step forward. But so him hitting the portal now, the only thing I could think is they think he has a ceiling and they're going for somebody else now in the secondary.
In some ways, isn't this as a Butch Jones recruit? Like getting Khalil McKenzie to play defensive tackle, even though he should have been an offensive lineman from day one, it gives you some credibility with the fans and with the boosters because you signed a McKenzie and his dad and uncle had played there. Does some of that factor into this?
Maybe, but I thought Christian Harrison had a little bit of promise. You know what I thought he was? I thought because Tennessee had so many issues in their secondary, they wanted a freshman like Christian Harrison, a guy like Christian Harrison who, if they're thin in the secondary, they can throw him in because while he may not be great, he will be seasoned and smart. So he'll be like one of those guys that's a freshman that plays like a junior. You know what I mean? Kind of like the best example is Michael Munoz back in the day, who had physical limitations, but was also very well developed the minute he stepped foot on campus. I mean, when he was a freshman, he looked like a senior, wasn't he?
Yeah, he had fundamentals better than some seniors.
Yeah. And so I think that's what they thought with Christian Harrison. But now that this defensive backs in the secondary has been shored up a lot more, I'm not so sure there's a place for Christian Harrison. You're right. Khalil McKenzie was just Butch Jones trying to sell a 5-star recruit. He should have been an offensive lineman, just like Jalen Hurts should have been a defensive end. But
and I would argue that taking Evan and Elliott Berry was kind of a PR move too.
It was, but I think they took Elliott for Evan because Evan was a reliable. Evan may be the best kick returner in Tennessee history. He rivals Willie Gault as a return specialist in Tennessee history. I would say that Todd Kelly Jr. was one that would have worked out if he didn't have injury issues, though. The son of Todd Kelly, and Nigel Warrior was a solid safety. The son of Dale Carter. Neither were as good as their father. I think Todd Kelly Jr. actually had the potential to be better. He just struggled. He battled injuries his last couple of years, and that was an issue. But
so, what do you think? What would you grade Tennessee's transfer portal to this point? I mean, I know we've got days to go to the end of the month, and more people could go, and they're going to bring more people in. At this point, out of the guys they've lost, I know Boston Lang, I didn't think was a big loss. Khalifa Keith, I didn't think was a big loss. I do think Harrison, if he's in the 2 deep, you're a significant loss, right?
Yeah, I think Harrison's. I already think he's the biggest loss for Tennessee.
Who would be second? I'm missing somebody.
Well, there's Caleb Webb, Nathan Leacock, Chaz Nimrod. It's probably Nimrod, right? Chaz Nimrod is the other big loss, along with Christian Harrison.
If I rated them right now, I'd probably say Harrison, Nimrod, Webb. The top 3 losses from Tennessee's transfer portal. How would you vote them?
I think you're right. Those 3. Now, do you think Cam Selden gets a case? Because he's not really going to be in the running back rotation, but he maybe could have been a kick returner and a return specialist and stuff like that. But yeah, I'd probably.
Let me ask you a question. When you ever go buy shoes, do you put on the wrong pair of shoes and you're like, this is incredibly uncomfortable?
Yes.
That's exactly how I felt when I was watching Chaz Nimrod play. So, I mean, to me, Caleb Webb is almost a bigger loss because I've seen Nimrod in the bright lights and he hasn't gotten it done. I'm not trying to rip the young man, but he's making a bad mistake leaving.
I was always shocked that he was seeing more action than Caleb Webb, though, because Caleb Webb seemed more athletic to me than Chaz Nimrod, funny enough. So, yeah, I was shocked it worked out. Someone brings up Jalen Smith. I think that's as big of a loss. I think they're building around Jeremiah Thielander and Arian Carter going forward. I know Thielander struggled. He was not ready to start this year. You talked about it on Saturday. If Keenan Pili plays against Ohio State, it actually may look a lot closer, funny enough.
What's the bigger loss, Keenan Pili or the loss to Arkansas?
Just the loss to Arkansas in general? That's a really good question. Well, if they beat Arkansas, they at least get a home game in this playoff. And probably they get Texas' seed, which means they're getting Clemson at home. And then they get to go play Arizona State in the second round. So with that in mind, I'm saying the loss to Arkansas because if they beat Arkansas, they would have this team would have beaten Clemson. I think you agree with me on that. They would have beaten Clemson pretty easily. And
I think there were 3 tiers of teams. I may have said this already, but I think there were 3 tiers of teams. Teams that should win the championship, like Georgia and Oregon. Teams that could win a championship, and teams that would need a lot of luck. I thought that Tennessee was in that second tier the whole time.
I did too. And if Tennessee had a home game, if they could have gotten Clemson at home, I think they win that one running away. If they got Penn State seed, they could have gotten SMU at home. And being on that side, you're playing Arizona State or Boise State in the bracket. If Tennessee beats Arkansas, they have the inside track to the Final Four. Just an easy coast. So that is a bigger loss. Keenan Pili was a huge loss, though. I mean, I'm not going to pretend he wasn't.
See, I think they drop another game, maybe Alabama, if he's hurt.
Well, wait, but he was hurt. But you're saying
no, I'm saying that they drop a game to like an Alabama, or he got hurt in the Florida game.
Oh, you're saying if they had beaten Arkansas, they might have dropped the game to Alabama if they didn't.
No, I'm just saying if he's there. I mean, you're using it as an absolute, right? You're saying that if they beat Arkansas, they're in the college football playoff with a home game. My absolute is if Keenan Pili, if Keenan Pili's 100% healthy, they don't lose another game. They play with Georgia. They look more impressive, and maybe they get a home playoff game. I just think from a leadership standpoint, he was that significant based off what I've been told. He was
a really, really, really big deal on that front. I still think that I think they still lose to Georgia, though. Now, I guess what you're saying is, though, if they beat Arkansas and then Pili gets hurt against Florida, maybe they do drop the Alabama game at that point because they're not as humbled as they need to be when they're. So that is highly possible. But yeah, so in that way, maybe it is bad with Keenan Pili getting hurt. But as far as like the transfer portal goes, I think it's very clear Christian Harrison's the biggest loss. But we got to wait and see. We have no idea what Josh Heupel and Tim Banks are about to do in the transfer portal going forward.
A red flag at all that he would leave, given that he's getting playing time. I don't have a problem with a kid leaving when he's getting playing time. But the fact that he's getting playing time, does that concern you?
This leads me to believe the coach is forced into the portal. I mean, he's a very mature kid, and he probably isn't chasing NIL dollars. He's the son of Rodney Harrison. So he probably is just looking at a place where he could be a better fit and play more. That's my guess. It's
time for This Day in Tennessee Sports History, and it's brought to you by TristarHatsCo.com. Get your TriStar Hats memorabilia. Use the promo code HOOK, TristarHatsCo.com.
Have you seen the latest TriStar Hats Co. product?
TriStar Hats Co.? What's that?
You know, those really cool hats, shirts, tumblers, and even license plates with 3 stars like the official Tennessee flag and stripes like the American flag. Pretty patriotic if you ask me.
Ah, gotcha. Seen those. Those are cool. Where can I get them?
Simple. TriStarHatsCo.com. And if you order now, there's 10% on any order $50 or more. Plus, use the promo code HOOKED.
With the promo code HOOKED, you get 10% off. That's hooked.
And don't forget free shipping with any order over $50. Stock up at TriStarHatsCo.com. That's TriStarHatsCo.com. There are plenty of wannabes out there, so make sure you go to TriStarHatsCo.com for the best quality and customer service.
Will do, and I'll be sure to use the promo code HOOKED. That's hooked when I do to save an additional 10% off. TriStarHatsCo.com.
TriStar Hats Co. is a trademark of TriStar Hats Co. LLC.
All right, this day in Tennessee sports history, what do you got, Caleb Calhoun?
On this day, 18 years ago, Tennessee basketball beat a Rick Barnes-led Texas team that had Kevin Durant on.
Oh, yeah. That's when Chris Lofton went off.
Yeah, they were down by 16 in the second half. They came back and won in overtime. Chris Lofton dropped off Kevin Durant from 35 feet out on a 3. That was the key play of the game. He finished the game with 35 points and 11 rebounds. Yeah, he absolutely went off that day. And honestly should have been our first sign that as great as Kevin Durant is, he ain't mentally tough. And he has never been mentally tough in the NBA.
No, somebody that has their own Twitter fake accounts to support themselves is not mentally tough.
No, not at all. And I love when people try to say he's mentally tougher than LeBron. No, he's not. Not at all. Not like LeBron is
I've never heard
significantly better.
anybody even suggest that.
People thought he was more clutch and things like that. I'm like, no, he's not. He went to Golden State to get to just ride the wave of 2 rings.
If you ever see him play in person, you'll realize that what a distinct disadvantage every other player on the court it has, because he's 7'2" and can handle the ball and move. We went to see him in Atlanta just to say that we saw Kevin Durant, and it's just when you're watching up close, you're like, he has a huge advantage over everybody he's playing.
Oh yeah, I think his career is a disappointment because of that. He should have more than one regular season MVP and 2 rings. He should have way more than that, honestly, for his career. Given his talent.
I have zero argument with that. So Caleb Calhoun, coming up, we've got Jacob Warren, who is scheduled to join us. We haven't heard from him yet, so we'll work on that. Hound Dogs of Knoxville, champions look good in orange. HDKnoxville.com. HDKnoxville.com. We greatly appreciate you supporting our sponsors. That's why we're here. I'm telling you what, they will take care of you. We either do business with them or would if we needed their services. So, Caleb, when we talk about I think that sometimes we get a little bit tangled up into talent evaluation and personnel usage. And I don't have as much of a problem, I think you do, with with talent evaluation rather than personnel usage. I just don't think they put the guys in the right position a lot.
That's probably true with coaching. That is probably the issue. And I think it affects play calling too. I felt that was how they handled Peyton Lewis, honestly, when he came in for Dylan Samson. Do we want to wait or do we want to dive in now and just ask how big of an issue was Dylan Sampson's injury?
Well, let's go do that right now because it was a monstrous injury. Tennessee loses its greatest leader and its most productive player in the first quarter against Ohio State. How much do you think that affected things, Caleb?
Losing Dylan Samson in the first quarter against Ohio State, I think affected things a lot. I talked about Tennessee's will being broken. I think Ohio State playing well partially broke their will, but I think Dylan Sampson going down really broke their will. And don't tell me running backs don't make a difference at all, because they can. And particularly at the college level, I also thought it affected Tennessee's play calling in a negative way. Because I've heard a lot about Peyton Lewis all year, and I told you guys I actually thought he was going to take Dylan Sampson's starting job midway through the year. I concede I was wrong. I was dead wrong on that. Dylan Sampson was the best player in the SEC. But I really thought that Tennessee – I got to really knock Joey Halzle on this. I felt that losing Dylan Sampson, they panicked and they just abandoned the run game completely.
I agree.
Yeah. And so – what's bigger, Dave? Was Dylan Sampson going down by just losing him, not having him, the bigger deal, or the fact that they changed their play calling up completely after?
All three of the above, and I'll add another one. to it. It's he's a heck of a leader. So they love blocking for him. So to lose him, I think had an emotional impact to some extent. And we'll visit with Cooper Mays. So be sure you hit that like and subscribe button so you get all of our latest content. But I just can't help but think if that's one of your most popular players on the team, how you can't suffer some sort of negative emotional repercussions. In the first quarter, especially in a road game like that, I mean, you would love for them to respond and be incredible, but we do have to remember these are young men.
Yeah, you're right. They're young men who made the moment so big for themselves because of all this, like I told you, all the talking they did, running out onto the field, taking their shirts off before the game to say, we're ready for this cold weather, to make a point. All that happens and your star offensive weapon goes down early. I mean, that just, and look, it's somebody like me who's eating so much crow because, yes, you guys are right. I thought Dylan Samson, I thought he was protecting himself for the NFL and wasn't really willing to go all out as a running back for Tennessee. I was dead wrong. I mean, that dude ran harder. He's the hardest running back I've seen at Tennessee since.
Yeah, and nobody would have begrudged him had he not come back in the game either.
Nobody. He wanted to. Did you see him on the sideline?
Yes.
He was trying to go back in the game. They wouldn't let him. Heupel's coaching staff wouldn't let him. So, I mean, I gotta, and maybe that's something where you give Josh Heupel credit because how many other coaches would willingly put a college kid's future at risk to put them in the game if they feel like they need to win? And Heupel said, we're not going to put your future at risk to do that, which is a testament to Heupel's character.
No, it is. It's a very big testament. But getting back to the original question, Dylan Samson leaving in the first quarter of a game like that has got to have a monstrous impact. I mean, it's arguably your best player. So does Tennessee win with Dylan Samson in the backfield for 80 snaps on Saturday? Probably not. I think Ohio State was significantly better, but I don't think it's a blowout.
No, I don't think it's a blowout. I think Tennessee sticks with the run game a lot more. I mean, let's be honest, Dave. One of the reasons Ohio State was able to start going off is they held the ball for a pretty good chunk of time in the first half. And, where I think it makes a big difference is, okay, so it's 21-10 at halftime. Tennessee gets the ball in the second half. I think you and I both are like, oh, Tennessee's got a really good chance to make this a game. I think there's a chance they score. I think almost knowing how I've known Dylan Samson all year, I feel like they do score a touchdown on that opening drive of the third quarter if Dylan Samson's out there. If they score a touchdown on that drive, you're talking about a totally different game. Now, Ohio State still wins, guys. Ohio State still probably wins, but I think it's more like 28-17, 20-24 with the late touchdown, not 42-17, and really 42-10. They scored a touchdown at the end that didn't really matter. I think
he's a lock as a player. You want to lock for your hot tubs, then you have to go to Dynasty Pools and Spas. Dave Hooker here for Dynasty Pools and Spas, your home for the best spas and everything you need to jump right in. Relaxing, therapeutic, absolutely. But what sets Dynasty Pools and Spas apart from others is that you get everything with any spa purchase. You get the cover lift, the steps, delivery, and chemicals. When Dynasty Pools and Spas delivers your spa from their Athens location within 125 miles, you'll get your own personal hydrotherapy spa. Mention me, Dave Hooker, or Off the Hook Sports, and get $500 off your top quality new spa. Dynasty Pools and Spas, just off the Athens exit. Drop in and receive a free gift from Off the Hook Sports, Dynasty Pools and Spas. Mention Off the Hook Sports for a drop-in prize and that $500 discount, Dynasty Pools and Spas. To check out some of the Dynasty Spa models and to buy spa chemicals, go to dynastypoolsandspas.com. All right, so Caleb, stat of the day, what is it, sir?
Well, let me save that for you. It's an interesting one.
Okay,
I'm
you're teasing it ahead? Oh, he's learning. He's teasing it ahead. Stat of the day coming up. Stay tuned. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vol collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
Community banking is about location and much more. It's about family. We reside in your community. We are a part of your community. At Commercial Bank, our commitment extends beyond the walls of our branches. It's displayed each day in the opportunities we provide, the money we give back, and the time we commit, all to help improve the lives of the people, families, and businesses that make our communities great. Commercial Bank, life made better.
Double D Piping provides full-service fire protection on any scale. From residential homes to government facilities, we can assist any customer through design, fabrication, installation, inspection, and demonstration of fire suppression systems. With 30 years of service across 5 states and a full staff with over 40 years experience, our quality can't be beaten. Don't get caught watching what you could have prevented. Call Double D Piping, the absolute best in fire prevention.
With our brand new location on Emory Road, Eye Care Optical is bringing East Tennessee's best eye care to your neighborhood. Doctors Johnston and Combs offer unmatched expertise and care without a trip to Knoxville. Eye Care Optical, now in Powell.
Are you ready to get strong? At NFC, we offer top-notch weight training and functional fitness, so you can build strength and improve your performance. Join today at NFC1.com or stop by any one of our 7 East Tennessee locations.
When the lights turn on and the game begins, you need a team that gets the job done. It's Ford commercial truck season at Varner Ford in Clinton, where our strong lineup is built for power and performance. Step up your game in this new 24 F-150 4x4 Super Crew, $26,997. It's at 250 Cargo Van, $50,950. 24 Ford Maverick XLT Hybrid, $28,929.
Local you trust, performance you can afford. Varner Ford, built for the game.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
You're listening to The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of OffTheHookSports.com.
The internet is full of pictures of each and every one of you.
Available on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Off the Hook Sports app. Download now for free.
Is there nothing you people can't do?
Also available on OffTheHookSports.com.
Welcome back to the program with Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker, the show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. It looks like Jacob is not going to be able to join us today. We're still working on that. He made the trip to Ohio. Something that we haven't talked about, Caleb, is the strong support of Tennessee fans. And I don't care if Ohio State doesn't like Ryan Day. I don't care if they're saving their money to go to the Rose Bowl. I'm just telling you, to have 30,000 people show up at your home stadium is an embarrassment.
It is. It absolutely is. And so I say we go ahead and just launch in then with this question and this topic. Well, let me give you my stat of the day real quick, and then I'll launch in. You ready for the stat of the day?
Ready.
So don't fret if you're one of those who cares about your record versus the Big Ten and you still believe in the conference pride. Don't fret about your lost Tennessee fans to the Big Ten. I don't, because I think the conferences are too big. I think the mega conferences at this point, like, you can't just be like, we play in the SEC, we play in the Big Ten. It matters who you play in those conferences now. But Tennessee is still 13-4 all time against Big Ten schools when playing them in the Big Ten, even after that loss. So I'm sorry, 13-6. They did lose to Purdue twice. But still, they're 13-6 all time against Big Ten schools when they play them and they're in the Big Ten. So Tennessee still has a pretty good record against the Big Ten, guys.
Yep. And pretty good stat of the day. Stat of the day brought to you by our fantastic friends at Joe Neubert Collision Center. For nearly 50 years, Neubert Collision Center has been East Tennessee's best choice for quality repair work and fantastic customer service. JoeNeubertCollision.com, JoeNeubertCollision.com. Also, remind you, first of the year's coming around, time for those resolutions. So you should be a member of National Fitness Center. Unmatched value, limitless options. Begin your fitness journey today. So I encourage you. I love National Fitness Center. Daily guy there. So I've even got Caleb kind of warmed over where he's starting to lift a little bit, right?
You were supposed to send me a workout plan, Dave, and you haven't yet.
I'm working on that. I have a few things going on right now. All right. So that was this day in Tennessee sports history. And then what's the bigger impact for Tennessee? Getting blown out, which is a negative, or Tennessee fans filling up the horseshoe, which is a positive and quite possibly could help the Vols in recruiting? What's the bigger storyline between the two?
So I said last week that I felt Tennessee had already won the college football playoff game by planning to fill up the horseshoe, and that would be the narrative in recruiting, provided they don't get blown out. But then they got blown out, so then it becomes a question. It's still, I'll say this much, even if I say this year's a disappointment. The positive of filling up the horseshoe outweighs the negative of getting blown out. Getting blown out, Dave, you've covered recruiting for a long time. That alone isn't going to deter a player from going to a school. Matter of fact, it may encourage them and maybe have them say, you know what, I want to go help them take that next step, pretty much. The level of fan support that you witness in a game like that, I think changes everything. I think, again, I don't think wins and losses affect recruiting. I don't think a win or loss in one game ever really affects recruiting on a player. Maybe it does, but if it does, it's probably not a player you want on your team anyway. But seeing that fan support at Ohio State, I'll just tell you this. I mean, David Sanders did sign with Tennessee, so it didn't matter. But if he was on the fence, I have a hunch that that would have impacted his decision more than the result of the game on Saturday.
All right, go ahead and click that like and subscribe button. Your thoughts. We made that the poll question. Can you read off the poll question for our good listeners and fans out there?
Yeah, sure. What would you grade? Oh, sorry, I still have the early poll question. Here we go. My biggest story for the Vols is making the CFP and being top 10 or getting blown out by Ohio State. So it's about, do you want me to give the results or are we teasing it right now?
Well, go ahead and give them. Here's my thoughts on that. There could be one prospect that watches television on Saturday night and says, wow, I really thought Tennessee was there at that level. Now, after seeing the personnel difference, I'm not so sure. So I think that could hurt you. But I believe that overwhelmingly the advantage will go to those that believe that Tennessee won 10 games this season, had a fantastic season. I think that should be remembered. You beat Florida and Alabama in the same year. I don't think this is the time for mourning at all.
No, I agree. I think it's a disappointment. I do think the season's a disappointment. I don't think the time is for mourning. But and from a recruiting perspective, look, if you didn't think your team was going to win a national title this year, which I thought Tennessee was going to, but if you didn't think they were going to, you would have rather filled up that stadium than even win the game, because this is going to, again, it's going to help you get to the level you want. Dave, I mean, I'll just ask you, having covered recruiting for a long time, have you ever seen a player flip his decision because of one blowout loss?
They didn't tell me if they did.
Okay. But they told you they made their decision
Not that there's any lying in recruiting.
Oh, no one ever lies. But they did tell you at times that they were sold on a program based on how impressed they were with the fan support at a game, didn't they? I'm sure that's been a factor, hasn't it?
Absolutely. Most oftentimes with Tennessee, frankly.
Yeah, it's funny. I forget, Fulmer, I think, once said why he recruited so well national. Didn't he say, if I could just get him in for a visit? Because particularly those California kids, they think of East Tennessee. They're like, oh, they have this mind in their head of backwoods Appalachia or whatever. Then they get to Knoxville, it's like a regular cool place. And it the expectation is so exceeded, it helps them significantly when they're there.
This is off topic a little bit, but how old was Philip Fulmer when he got the head coaching job at Tennessee? 42-ish?
42, right at 42.
Okay. If he's 42 years old right now and he's coaching this team with the same group that he had, is he having success? Because you mentioned the recruiting aspect. Yes, getting them to Knoxville is a big thing, but the other thing that's a huge factor is getting them in the stadium atmosphere with your fans that are completely jazzed. And that wasn't the case for about the last 5 years of his career. Let me get your take on that. Work trucks, all about trucks. Trucks are actually available. Trucks that help you maximize your profits by having the right work vehicle. Now, time is money. The perfect work trucks. A vehicle doesn't break down, has all the space to carry what you need. That's what Work Trucks is intent on offering, while other dealerships just can't do it. Contracting about time. Work Trucks saves you time with less back and forth trips and trucks that pass the highest standards to be put to work. The process is quick and easy when choosing a vehicle for work trucks. Cargo vans, utility body trucks with an iPod work bodies installed. They've got it all. Work Trucks with an X, LLC.com. They got cranes and dump trucks, for goodness sake. Work Trucks with an X, LLC.com. Downtown Birmingham, Clinton Highway, and Knoxville. Work Trucks with an X, LLC.com. Proud supporter of the Tennessee Vols. So I did get word that Jacob Warren is going to join us here in just a second. So we're going to talk to him specifically about the offensive tackle position. But Caleb, let me get back to what we were discussing. And that was, what would Philip Fulmer do with this landscape if he were 42 years old and hired to be the head coach of the Vols tomorrow?
Okay, that's so hard for me to say, because Philip Fulmer be as ahead of the curve in recruiting as he was, like in this generation, as he was in the 90s? Because Philip Fulmer had some things in the 90s that made him ahead of the curve that everybody does now. I mean, one big example, because he was I'll just say it. I think this had a big impact on Philip Fulmer. He played at Tennessee when Tennessee really led the charge for integrating college football. That made Philip Fulmer not scared to go to certain areas to recruit that I think a lot of older Southern coaches were scared to go to recruit, if you know what I'm talking about. I think many coaches, Deion Grant, Philip Fulmer had no hesitation to going into a really rough part of Atlanta, right, to go get Deion Grant. And that was
Uncle Dave's story one time. Do you remember the name Demetrian Bill?
Yes, I do.
Okay. So he showed up on campus like a month before he was supposed to be enrolled, and he was at spring practice. So when we had to ask, said, that's Demetrian Bill, isn't it? And he's not supposed to be here yet because of NCAA rules. And Philip said, what, am I just supposed to leave him in Compton? And I still remember that being like, you think of Philip Fulmer as being this, I don't know, a businessman type of thing, but you look at the job that he had to do and walk into some of these scary environments. It's actually pretty impressive when you think about it.
Yeah, particularly from that. I mean, all coaches do it now, but during that time, many coaches were older and had, unfortunately, certain outdated viewpoints, and they would not go to areas to recruit kids. I can tell you in Memphis, where I'm from, there is a rough area known as Orange Mountain. That's where Melrose is. Fulmer literally would just walk in. I mean, he knew everybody by their first name at Melrose and in Orange Mountain. I mean, Tennessee had a Melrose to Tennessee pipeline, which was Cedric Wilson, Andre Lott, Mondre Dickerson. All of them came from Orange Mountain.
All right, let's bring Jacob Warren in here and get his thoughts on this topic. Jacob, how are you, sir?
Good morning. I'm fantastic. How are you?
I'm never better. All right. So, Jacob, we were just discussing how big of a factor was Dylan Samson's injury at Ohio State. We're also discussing the bigger impact on recruiting for Tennessee, just making the playoff, or is it getting blown out, not looking as good as maybe we thought they would. Let's start with Samson. How big of a factor do you think his injury was from a psychological standpoint, and him going out in the first quarter? Because he's one of the elite team leaders.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's definitely, there's multiple layers to it, right? Because like you said, like you just mentioned, and something I didn't really think about and I wasn't going to talk about is him as a team leader, right? And just him and his ability to rally his guys, right? And for people to just truly support him and play for him, right? Not that no one doesn't play for Deshaun Bishop or Peyton Lewis or whatever, or everybody else for that matter. But there's a little bit different feel, I guess, whenever your bell cow isn't out there. Like, that's your guy. Like, that is the guy that you said, or at least the guy that I said going into this game was going to win you that game, right? Anytime I was up in Ohio, and that's might be why I'm a little, sound a little crazy or whatever, but just been trying to recover on sleep and just everything is late night. And like every Ohio State fan that I walked up to is like, why do you think you're going to win? And I would say, because we're going to run the crap out of the ball and our defense is better than yours, right? And that's truly like what I thought the keys to the game was running the ball super efficiently and playing really, really good defense. And to be completely honest, I don't think either of those things really happened consistently, right? There was sometimes when it was good here, sometimes it was good here, but those things weren't necessarily as consistent as they should have been to be able to win a game like that. So, I think it's a big hit, and it's just something that you look at and you say, well, I'm not going to say we just got our butt whooped, but we pretty much just got our butt whooped, right? There wasn't much we could do, and we couldn't really run the ball well. We didn't seem like we were connecting well, and who knows the reason? But now we're sitting here talking about it. So,
Jacob, do you think if Dylan Samson is out there that maybe they stick with the run a lot more? I felt they got way too pass happy with Nico early on. Do you think they keep it on the ground at least through the third quarter?
We all have our opinions, right? I think for sure. I think Deshaun Bishop honestly ran the ball pretty hard, ran the ball decently well. I don't think he necessarily, went crazy, right? I don't think he necessarily would have made a lot of the plays, whatever, out there. But, I think shying away from the run, I just don't know, man. I think you just get a feel for it. And I guess, I don't know if Nico just felt good about trying to get the ball out on the perimeter. Kind of some of the defenses they were giving us. What we get a lot, man, is you just get these corners and these safeties playing at 12, 13 yards, and you get these apex defenders. And by apex defender, for people that don't know, essentially like a big body, a linebacker body who's playing in between the slot wide receiver and the box. So the people on the line of scrimmage, the O-linemen, the tight ends, the quarterback, all that stuff. And they would just play this super, super soft man and just allow that apex to flow up underneath all the short stuff and just to fit the run. So the run wasn't really that good because their box ended up pretty heavy. It looked light. Everybody's like, why can't they run against a 5-man box? It's a 5-6-man box. We should be able to run. But you're immediately having apex defenders flying in this box. And these people aren't like guys from UT Chat, right? Like these guys are fast. These guys are big. Like they say, best roster money can buy. I don't want to make excuses. I kind of read the chat before I hopped in, and I see that might have been a topic of conversation about just how good these guys were. But when your defenders are able to play off at 12, 13 yards, where are you going to throw the ball, right? You could throw it short. And we did a couple times. You throw it short, they rally, make a tackle for 4 or 5 yards. Now what do? You know what I'm saying? You're not going to throw it over their head because you're not like, let's be real. They're a very, very fast team. And we didn't necessarily just have people just faster than they were. We didn't necessarily have people just bigger than they were on the perimeter. So, I don't know where you go with the pass game. I don't know, man. It was my mind's kind of just jumbled on it, and I don't exactly know what to think about it. But I'll just leave it there.
You seemed a little shocked, a little stunned. Did you feel pretty good about Tennessee going up there and getting the win?
I was very shocked. Every single person I talked to, I was very, very confident that we could handle ourselves and we could really run the ball well. I'm shocked we didn't run the ball well. That's my biggest thing, is I'm shocked that we did not run the ball extremely efficiently and keep ourselves in that game on the ground. It's tough when it's cold, whatever. Everybody, dude, we're all human, right? Ohio State people are cold too. Their fans were just as cold as our fans, right? Just because you live up there does not mean you're not immune to the cold. But I will say, like, you, in my mind, going into it, and again, what I think literally doesn't matter, but in my mind going into it was we'd keep that ball on the ground. We'd just run, put the trust on the back of our run game, rotate all of our guys, man. We got good backs, and then be able to control the game in a way that we just seem to not. And so, yeah, I'm pretty surprised by the outcome. Obviously, I'm always going to be finding a way to support my guys, right, and my team and my alma mater and all those things. And so, yeah, dude, if you asked me before the game, I would have never said that we'd lose ever. It just wouldn't happen. So, yeah, I'm surprised.
Wow.
So, Jacob, can I ask the uncomfortable question then? Because they struggled to run the ball. Dylan Samson went down.
Probably going to anyway.
Really,
even if I said no.
So. I was really concerned with where that question was going. All right.
Yeah. The uncomfortable question. You wanted to go jump in the hot tub together? No, I'm kidding. It's
our first question brought to you by Dynasty Pools and Spas.
Hey, here we go.
So
afterwards, we can go get IVs.
There we go. Exactly.
Actually, I'm glad you did that because I forgot to mention that Jacob is brought to you by Peak IV Hydration. Sorry to interrupt.
Sorry, Caleb.
Peak IV Hydration, South Knoxville and Sevierville. Live your life to the fullest. PeakIVHydration.com. We can put that chat in there. Hydrate, rejuvenate, and elevate your health with Peak IV Hydration. And they got the patch, so it works incredibly well. Sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
Just because it's not cold, guys, still got to take care of your body. Still got to take care of your hydration. Something you don't really think about a whole lot. So make sure you go check out the link.
I drink a pot of coffee, so I'm perpetually dehydrated. So that's
that might be a little bit more than the recommended amount, but
that's
all right.
So, also to the point of hydration, I don't know if because it was just in the cold, people don't know this. The cold weather dehydrates you faster than the heat. A lot of people don't know that.
It's tough. It's tricky, man. And planes.
Yeah.
You got to hydrate on planes.
Yes, that is true. So I want to ask you about, there was a lot of talk going in about the takeover of Columbus by Tennessee fans, and they did. They took over Columbus to their credit.
Oh, yeah. Sure.
There was everybody running out onto the field before the game, taking their shirts off, saying, the players, we're ready for this cold weather.
Wait, can I stop for a second? What did you think about that?
Who, me?
Yeah.
What, the fans or the shirts?
The no shirts.
I knew they were gonna do it. Like, that's just the thing to do whenever it's like way colder than it should be, is just take your shirt off and I guess you look cool. I guess you look tough. Me personally, I would have had my shirt on if I was playing the game. I'm not taking my shirt off just because why would I? You know what I mean? I don't really care about all that stuff. But no, I knew at least a couple of the O-line would have come out with their shirts off, and Ollie Lane would have done it last year. I bet you next time you talk to him, I promise you he would have been doing it. So I don't know. It's just part of it. You see it all around the country. It's nothing new, but whatever.
Yeah, so that happens. And then on the first drive, they think they get a stop, but Bryson Easton gets a face mask, which, it was a good call, but it's demoralizing. You give up a touchdown. And then on the second, and then when your first possession, your star player, as you mentioned, Dylan Samson, goes down with an injury. Yeah. Given those two things happening in sequential order, combined with all the hype before the game, did Ohio State break Tennessee's will? Did it seem like their will was broken?
And this is something that is not. I'm gonna say no, but it is tough to watch. Just deflation of just everything, right? From the fans to the players to, now you're seeing a different temperament from coach, right? Just of him feeling like, man, oh God, everything just becomes so just whatever, just frantic, and not in a panicky way, but just in a, we're fighting for calls now. We're fighting for, little tiny ticky-tack things. And it just is whenever a big penalty doesn't go our way, if we're up 7 or up 14, right, it's a little bit different. But when you're down 21 or down 14, and it's everybody's we just looking for something to grasp onto, right? We're just looking for something to get that fire going again, just because, yeah, dude, they come out and you get it wasn't a bad penalty, right? It was a bad penalty, but it wasn't a bad call. It's a good call. It just sucks, right? It just sucks that it happened. But truthfully, I think, and me and a couple of my buddies in the stands were talking, after they had just went up 14, and we were like, man, I know you can't really blame stuff like this, but if that face mask never happens, right, they punt that ball to us, who knows? You know what I mean? Literally, who knows what happens? That could change the trajectory of the whole entire game. And that's a little bit dramatic. I should take that back. That should change the trajectory of the next few drives, at least, which in turn could change the trajectory of the half and then of the game. So I think that, stuff like that, people don't, maybe they do realize, but a lot of people don't realize that that's a game-changing play. After that, they drove down the field and hit that seam ball down the sidelines and just let their wide receivers go do whatever they want to do. Everybody's like, oh, whoa, okay, we got to figure this out. And they did it again the next drive. It's just that's a bad feeling as a player. And it's a bad feeling as a fan, I understand, but that's a very, very bad feeling as a player when you just almost feel like we have to get something going or this is going to get really, really ugly. And that's not even not having faith in yourself. That's just a reality of the situation when you're playing a team like this.
Let me ask you, if you're a recruit, Jacob, because you were one not that long ago, would you look at Tennessee showing against Ohio State and say, man, they had 30,000 people up there buying away tickets? Or would you look at it as, man, looks like Ohio State and Georgia are still a tick above talent level than the Vols? Yeah, as a prospect, how would you view that?
Yeah, as a prospect, I would view it, I'm always viewing it as opportunity, right? So I think the way that this, and I'm not even going to start because I'll be talking here forever. The way the transfer portal and everything is nowadays, man, NIL, all this, it's so much different than even 6 years ago, right? When I was getting recruited. But like to me, get recruited was all about just opportunity, right? Tennessee offered me the most opportunity, and I had to weigh at this point in Tennessee's life, right? I had to weigh, does a championship bring me out more opportunities? Does, a bunch of big bowl games bring me more opportunities? Or does the school that I'd be going to, the friends that I want to stay around, family, the, ability to play for my hometown, like all these are big opportunities for me, right? And so I have a little bit different of a viewpoint, I think, than a lot of people. But sure, I think it would be tough watching an Ohio State Tennessee game when you're offered by Ohio State and Tennessee, and you look at that game and you go, okay, well, what happened, right? Like, you just saw what happened. You saw exactly how it went down. And if winning that game is important to you, then for sure, I guess you would be leaning more towards Ohio State. But, and this might sound bad, right? But if I'm a wide receiver and I'm watching Ohio State, they got a sophomore wide receiver and a freshman wide receiver that are arguably two of the better wide receivers in the country, right? They have one of the best receiver corps in the country.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to Ohio State. Like, I'm just not going to go.
Right.
And that's not, that could be me not being a competitor. If all these people in the chat want to talk crap, that's fine. But that, to me, is not opportunity. That is just, this isn't like in a hateful way at all. That's just purely going to a place because of what's happening like right now. And can I get that quick fix? Like, I'm going to be cool if I go to Ohio State because they're winning and they're good. I don't know, man. That's just my opinion on it. And I think I have a very, very different opinion than a lot of people. I valued all the things that Tennessee had to offer. And that sitting right here, Tennessee was the most valuable experience of my entire life. And it truly changed my life. So I wouldn't pick anything over it if that's what you're asking. I know that's not really what you're asking, but me personally.
I get that. You made a business decision, and recruiting fans is short for fanatics. They oftentimes they're not trying to make a business decision, the right decision. They're just trying to get their opinion out there. But my question, going back to the original, was, would you look at this Tennessee football team and be concerned that they are about as talented as they're going to get, and there's a glass ceiling?
Yeah. I think we got out talented. Honestly, I think they had great talent, and I think that they had great speed. Their wide receivers were just flying around. Their quarterback put the ball in the right spots. I didn't necessarily think he was a world beater before the game. I thought he played pretty well. I thought he did exactly what he needed to do to get them to win that game like they did. So can't even hit on him. I think their running backs are fast. Like, they have great talent. And I think everyone in the country knows that they have great talent. They have the best roster money can buy. That's what I hear. That's what I heard all over the place. Them in Oregon, whatever.
Oh, like you didn't get any cash.
Best roster money can buy.
Yeah,
dude.
I got to do my IRSs.
Don't try me, Dave.
I got to do my taxes this year. You made some cash.
This is different, all right? I work for my money. I come here and I talk to you every freaking week, man. How about that?
Damn right.
So, man, best roster money can buy. Like, you got to expect them to have some dudes, right? And we got dudes too. We have dudes for sure, but I think that there is a step that is going to be taken in the next little bit of truly just like really, really, really solid ball players that can just completely change the whole trajectory of a game. That's the talent that I think this team, could have, right? Maybe it's next year after another year of development for some players, but they just need that person that's just going to spark every single game, regardless of what happens. And then now, obviously that's not a real thing, right? And obviously that person gets hurt. There's all these different circumstances, but I just think some of these teams just have just elite player, 18 years old, not there just being freaks on the field. Like, that's unheard of. That's very, very. I mean, we might get one in this class. Who knows? But we'll see.
So when you say freaks on the field, you're talking about like Ludacris in the Georgia Dome on the 50-yard line.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I meant. Yeah.
Does anybody, I'm going to throw this statement out there and see who believes it. Who has seen Ludacris at the Georgia Dome at the 50-yard line? I have. Anybody else?
Really? You have?
Yes. He played halftime. I was at a Cowboys game. I was like, why is Ludacris out there? But anyway,
pretty awesome, actually. So, we talk about the fans and the recruiting aspect and things like that. Jake, I want to know your thoughts on this because you were in the stands, you were around the Tennessee fans.
Mm-hmm.
How much of whether or not maybe the players' will didn't break, but I think it's very clear. How much of what happened of what we just talked about a little while ago did it break the fans' will? Because it seemed like it really got Ohio State. Even though Tennessee fans took over the stadium, Ohio State fans got really, really, really loud and into the game after that, didn't they?
Yeah, but this is my thing too, man. They're like, maybe it was just where we were sitting or whatever. Like you couldn't really hear it too good. I'm sure on the field it's probably louder or whatever. But like me and my buddy Paxton, who I played with for 5 years and one of my best friends, we were sitting there and it was just like, what? Sorry. Yeah, punter, Paxton Brooks.
Okay.
Yeah.
He has a last name, Caleb. He's not just the punter.
He came up from South Carolina and we drove up together and stayed up there and just tried to just enjoy the weekend, whatever. But part of it was, both of us walking around pregame with all of our Tennessee on. He has his Letterman jacket on. So obviously people know, did something, whatever. And you hear a little bit before the game, whatever. Then you get in the stadium and you're like, this is not – I compare everything to our home stadium. I compare everything to Neyland, right? And Neyland is a totally different environment, a totally different beast. And I just don't think that their stadium environment, lived up to that. And I think it's probably because a very large, minority of the fans were from Tennessee, right? So we're not going to be super loud against our own team. But they're putting up the decibel meter on the thing, and it was saying 120, 121. And I was like, no, dude, that's super, super loud. Neyland is almost that loud sometimes. And so whatever. But dude, honestly, I
don't trust any of those.
No, I was pretty you said something about the sound. I was pretty underwhelmed by just the noise in the crowd. But I honestly, I do think that the fans kind of felt that deflation, kind of got that just down feeling once everything kind of started going their way. And then, of course, I wasn't sitting next to any Ohio State fans, luckily, but I'm sure you're hearing all type of crap talk from them in the stands and just fans having to deal with it. And that's something I've never dealt with. Walking back to the car after a loss and you're wearing all your team's gear and you just lost.
Yeah.
Just fans chirping everywhere. And it's just I know this is so terrible in Tennessee whenever we win. I know it's awful. So I can't even really be upset about it because whatever. We do it to other people too. So
I just want to point in, Dave, real quick. When I live in cold weather. When you go to a game in the cold and your team's losing, you learn, Jacob, didn't you? It gets a lot colder.
It gets a whole lot colder. My toes got a little bit colder. I wasn't quite jumping up and moving around quite as much. So I'm sitting there, just got my little hoodie up. Just cold, man.
Jacob, you should have dropped the IFO on people's. I didn't know you were going up, or I would have told you that. Are you familiar with the IFO?
Nope.
Okay. IFO is people from Ohio that come to Norris Lake, which is just north of Knoxville.
Mm-hmm.
And they go there because they don't have any good lakes in Ohio. And if you go to the north side, it's almost completely Ohio people. They're IFOs, idiots from Ohio, because they don't know how to drive a boat.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Sweet. IFOs. All right, you IFOs.
If you don't know how to drive a boat, don't get on the Dad Blame Blake, period.
Yeah, please don't. That's very dangerous.
Yeah, that's...
You got anything else, Caleb, before we let Jacob out of here?
No, I think I'm good. Yeah, it was glad you at least enjoyed the I'm sure it was fun until kickoff. So
it was fun. And listen, for me too, personally, it was an amazing experience to see my friends and people that I've played with for years and years have their final game, regardless of whether that's how they wanted to go out or not. I got to respect people like Cooper, man, my buddy Matty Solansky, all these players, man, that just have given their everything for this program. It's a terrible way to go out. Don't get a bowl experience. You don't get a ring. You don't get none of that. So
that is the weird part about it. You don't get an extra 2 weeks of practice.
You don't get the practice, but you also don't get people don't realize you realize the bowl's cool because people go down for the bowl game and they get to be somewhere warm and stuff. But the bowl games ended up being truthfully my favorite time of year, just because everybody was together. Everybody was just eating together, hanging out together, going out together, practicing together. It was just a grind, but it was such a good time. And so I feel for those guys that didn't get that experience. And man, just happy to see them kind of finish their careers. And they were all playing their butts off the whole entire game, man. I was super proud to watch that and see that. So much respect to them, much love to them. And just keep them in your thoughts, man. It's a rough time, a rough transition. So we'll see where they all end up.
I wanted to throw in, actually, sorry, Dave, but I did want to throw in because Dave knows this very well because Dave hates this person. But Jacob, when you were very, very young, maybe a baby, I don't even know if you were born yet.
When you were very, very young, I hated Jacob.
When you were 0 or 1, Lou Holtz, the legendary coach, actually once asked for regulations on decibels at football games. He thought there should be a decibel max that you're allowed to reach. I'm not kidding.
That sounds ridiculous.
Yes, exactly.
That's like saying it's not allowed to be too cold. Like you can't just say that.
He coached at Notre Dame when Notre Dame was the
comedy, and you're not allowed to laugh. Go ahead.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, he coached at Notre Dame when Notre Dame was the institutional school. So they're like, oh, we're Notre Dame, and we go to games like gentlemen. Yes, and we sit.
Can't be too loud.
Yeah, exactly. Or as Dave would do his Lou Holtz impression, saying it.
Yes. I'm not going to do that. I feel bad about it. All right, Jacob, have a fantastic Christmas. Merry Christmas to you, sir. We need to hook up this week, and we'll get together and have a blessed day. I appreciate you more than you can possibly imagine.
Sounds good.
Thank you, sir. Jacob Warren. The show presented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. Coming up, has Tennessee hit its ceiling under Josh Heupel? Let's make that a poll question as well. I don't believe so, but I think there's an argument to be had that they have. Also, did the college football playoff games prove expansion was unnecessary? That'll be Last Look, brought to you by Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn. Stay tuned. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Neubert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Neubert Collision Center.
24 F-150 4x4 Super Crew, $46,997. 24 Ford Transit 250 cargo van, $50,950. 24 Ford Maverick XLT Hybrid, $28,929. Local you trust, power you can afford.
Having been in the jewelry industry for a long time in the Knoxville community, I saw a need for a jeweler, a real jeweler.
Our ability to do these designs has really been based on the customers bringing new things in and challenging us as a store. Our goal is not to tell anybody what they want. Our goal is to listen to what they want and then help them get there.
Schedule your consultation today to get your special someone the perfect custom gift just in time for the holidays.
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Dare to compare.
With our brand new location on Emory Road, Eye Care Optical is bringing East Tennessee's best eye care to your neighborhood. Doctors Johnston and Combs offer unmatched expertise and care without a trip to Knoxville. Eye Care Optical, now in Powell.
Double D Piping provides full-service fire protection on any scale. From residential homes to government facilities, we can assist any customer through design, fabrication, installation, inspection, and demonstration of fire suppression systems. With 30 years of service across 5 states and a full staff with over 40 years experience, our quality can't be beaten. Don't get caught watching what you could have prevented. Call Double D Piping, the absolute best in fire prevention.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
Who's this guy?
Hello, who is it?
The Dave Hooker Show,
Who?
a presentation of Off the Hook Sports,
What?
YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
Portions of the program brought to you by Quality Tire Pros, serving Chattanooga's community since 1957. All major brands of tires, full service automotive, brakes, alignments, oil changes, and more. QualityTirePros.com. That's QualityTirePros.com. Also want to thank our friends at Rick Terry Jewelry Design. They want to be your jeweler looking for affordable game day jewelry. A Tennessee tradition. RickTerryJewelry.com. RickTerryJewelry.com. It's time for Bank on It. as I think Caleb's going to disagree with me here, but I feel very certain about it. Bank on it, brought to you by our friends at Commercial Bank. I was there just this morning. Commercial Bank, member FDIC, life made better, cbtn.com, cbtn.com. That is Commercial Bank. So I'm going to go ahead and throw it out there right now, Caleb, that I know you disagree with me, so I want to hear your take for sure. But has Tennessee football hit its ceiling under Josh Heupel? I'm going to go ahead and say no. I don't believe they have, and I think that Josh Heupel will win a championship. And really, Saturday did a little to affect my opinion on that. Bank on it. Josh Heupel has not hit a glass ceiling at Tennessee. Brought to you by Commercial Bank.
Commercial Bank is your neighborhood bank. What makes us different from other banks? We understand that every customer has unique opportunities, challenges, and financial concerns. We don't expect you to fit into the same box as the next person or business. Whether it's purchasing a home, saving for your child's future, or planning for your next vacation, we're with you every step of the way to navigate life's big decisions.
So, Caleb, let me ask you this. Has Tennessee hit a glass ceiling under Josh Heupel?
Yes, but let me be a caveat. It's a glass
caveats.
It's a glass ceiling, meaning you can shatter it. So Josh Heupel, so they haven't hit a concrete ceiling. Josh Heupel doesn't have a concrete ceiling. He just does have a glass ceiling with his style right now. So he will have to break the glass ceiling will require him to change some things about himself. And
such as,
I'm sorry,
such as
he is going to have another creative voice in the room on the offensive side. I think right now the game plans are all his, and nobody challenges anything of him. And I think that's hurt the offenses because I don't think Joey Halsey brings anything extra to the table. And I think
now I agree with that, but you were a big fan of the Halsey hire in the beginning.
I defended Halsey last year because I thought it was Joe Milton, but now we're 2 years deep covering Tennessee, and the offense has not sniffed what it was doing in 2022. And people are going to be, and this is where you have to take with college football stats, Dave. I think you have to separate stats first in your non-conference games versus your conference games. And I think that the difference is 2022, they were dropping 60 points on SEC teams. And so I think there's a big knock against Joey Halsey for that. I'm not even saying Halsey's a bad offensive coordinator. What I'm saying is Halsey and Heupel together doesn't work because there's no other voice in the room to challenge the game plan. I also think that Heupel needs to, and I don't know how you do this, but he's got to really reset how he's evaluating talent. I think he's missing on too many guys. And I mean, this is very clearly on the offensive line, but it reminds me of Dave. Heupel's coming across right now as the NFL GM that just keeps trying to find free agents on the offensive line every offseason rather than just try to draft and develop guys.
Oh, I think that's his plan. I think that's incredibly. I mean, maybe David Sanders is a symbol of a shift in that regard, but I think that was his plan to go with offensive linemen in that regard, don't you?
Yeah, but with offensive line, you don't build depth that way, and you don't build chemistry that way. And I mean, I think at some point and maybe it will get better. I hear, and you've heard too, that William Satterwhite's going to be good next year, right?
Yes, I believe he'll be very good.
And yeah, and he signed David Sanders, so maybe things are changing. Maybe he signed a bunch of offensive linemen and I'll say this, and I want to say this in Josh Heupel's defense. Maybe I'm judging him in the old school way because back in the day, Dave, my philosophy was you don't sign a guy unless you think he's actually going to play for you. But now you can sign a guy to fill a roster spot, right? Even if you don't think he's going to play for you, and you can send him to the portal.
Bison Lane, Khalifa Keith.
Yes, exactly. It seems like that's what Josh Heupel's been doing a lot of on the offensive line. But 4 years in, I think Josh Heupel's going to have to acknowledge to himself, I got to be able to develop these guys more on the offensive line. And look, I'm going to give credit. Glenn Ellerbe turned Darnell Wright into a top 10 pick. Cooper Mace has thrived under him. And Dave, tell me if I'm wrong on this. I don't know if I can give Glenn Ellerbe credit for Cooper Mace. I think Cooper Mace would have been an all SEC center in any team he played for, or an all conference center, no matter who he played for in college football.
I tend to agree with that.
Guy. And so at some point we have to ask, he's going to have to either ask a question to himself about player development or talent evaluation on the offensive line, because I don't think it's there, and I think he's missed too much.
I would argue that offensive line more than any other position has to come through the high school ranks because I want those guys working together as freshmen and sophomores in college, right? I want them building chemistry. Chemistry is so key on the offensive line. So the notion, if this is what he has, and they landed David Sanders, I'm sure they paid a pretty penny for him, so that's why they got him. But if they're just going to plug guys in on the offensive line, I wouldn't expect them to ever have elite chemistry, especially when you look back at Lance Hurd and he was injured for the first month of the season. I mean, back in the old days, and I don't want to sound like the old fuddy-duddy, but when Philip Fulmer did have a 2-deep offensive line, they would have plugged somebody else in and set Lance Hurd for the first month of the season.
Yes,
so that speaks to me that you just don't have that depth. The next guy's a big fall off, and you have to build that offensive line through high school recruiting. I'm sorry, if Tennessee goes out and signs 5 transfer portal guys for the offensive line, I'll still say I would rather have 5 stars in high school recruiting. Do you agree or disagree with that?
Oh, I totally agree. O-line play is way more about chemistry, and because there's so many different cadences you get from each other, it's just hard to, throw that together. Now, maybe in a year you can get it together, but they got to play together for a certain amount of time. And I think that I'm with you. I don't like the way Heupel's gone about this. And I think that's why, as of right now, he's hit a glass ceiling, Dave, because honestly, if Josh Heupel doesn't accept more pushback on his offensive game plan, and if he doesn't accept that he's got to build depth on his offensive line through the high school ranks, I think 10 wins is as good as it's going to get for Tennessee under him. I really do. And I think that, I don't know where you land on that. I mean, do you honestly, do you think Josh Heupel can win a national title doing what he's been doing, which is no changes to his offensive game plan and not building through the high school ranks in the offensive line?
Well, I think he can fix the high school offensive line recruiting. So I think he'll fix that. So I'm not as concerned about that.
Well, that would be the question.
Might not happen overnight, though, because you're talking about guys that you've taken 2 years ago that need to be able to contribute in 2025. So you can't say, oops, I didn't do a good job on offensive linemen, so I had a bad season in 2025 and 2026. My bad. I mean, nobody's going to say that's just okay. So that's my concern. I mean, you have to have Larry Johnson step up, who I think is a big guy who has power, but he's a little slow-footed because he's not in his element yet playing college football. And then I think you have Shamarad Umarov that has to step up. I like William Satterwhite. But the simple fact is most SEC teams would point to more than 3 offensive linemen that are going to be solid in a given year if they're expecting success.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the problem with Heupel is we talk about him being a little cocky. I think Heupel believes so much in his ability to call plays. I think he believes he doesn't necessarily have to have that level of depth of Jimmy's and Joe's up front. And I think that could end up being a big issue. I mean, I'll just ask this, because someone just brought it up. Are we sure Josh Heupel isn't a lot more like Mike Leach than we thought he was? Which is, we always thought Mike Leach just was 10-2 was his best. He was always going to lose a game he shouldn't, even when he had his best team possible.
God rest his soul. I think that Josh Heupel is a considerably better coach than Mike Leach. No offense to Mike Leach.
You think he's a better coach? So I kind of worry about that for Josh Heupel. If it seems like Josh Heupel believes so much in his game plan, he thinks that it doesn't matter who he plugs in at offensive line as long as he's got 5 guys.
I agree with that, and I think there's something to be said about the fact that he's put people at the wrong positions. We talked about Dante Thornton playing slot instead. We talked about other guys moving around on the offensive line. There seems to be uncertainty with some personnel decisions, which is befuddling. All right, Caleb, you were the first of many to say, don't expand the college football playoff. I love it so much the way it is. But you did that. And
how do I sound? What do I sound like?
Well, tell me what you sound like, because we may disagree. Chattanooga Mortgage, congratulations. Your home just got easier. Buying a home in Chattanooga has never been easier. Chat Mortgage, chat with 2tsmortgage.com. So do you think your stance looks stronger or weaker after the weekend?
I am thoroughly validated on my stance. That was the most boring slate of games I've ever watched, and you guys sacrificed the entire regular season for those games. I'm going to tell you something real quick, because I know what Dave's going to come back at me. I'm going to telegraph Dave.
Am I that predictable? Do you really know what I'm going to come back at you with?
the TV ratings from the regular season games.
Okay.
College football
down?
isn't. I'm sorry?
Were they down?
No, they were up. No, I'm saying you're going to come back at me with the TV ratings from the regular season games. So
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Well, I didn't
like,
think of that one, but I'll do that.
Huh?
TV ratings are up. I'll do that. I didn't think of that one, but since you gave it to me, I'll do it.
People are going to come back at me with this. Okay. I want to tell you a little bit. Guys, I studied history in college. College football is in the roaring 20s right now. And what I mean by that is because of the expanded playoff, TV ratings are up. Everything's going well. Even with the expanded playoff, has everybody watching college football in December now. They've expanded the postseason. So the ratings there are up. They're bringing in a lot of money. They've expanded, that's brought in more interest in the regular season. So TV ratings are up. But for those who don't know, the roaring 20s, when the stock market just kept going up and up, politicians would be like, hey, prosperity's just around the corner. If you take a second mortgage out on your house and go invest it all in the stock market, you're going to get rich too one day. And people were ignoring the gigantic signs that a crash was on the horizon. And what happened in 1929? The roaring 20s came to a very fast end with the stock market crash in October that launched the Great Depression, which became a worldwide catastrophe. College football, so the sign in the 20s was real estate development actually had stopped in 1926, and no one was paying attention to that. The sign for college football is the results of the playoffs this past weekend. People are watching the regular season right now because they're like, my team can go to the playoff and we can maybe win it. And it's like, nope, your team can't.
The hour for those that are curious. Go ahead.
Your team can't win it. There's no such thing as a Cinderella in college football. As a matter of fact, Eric Claiborne just said it. You beat me to it, Eric. You're right. Cinderellas don't exist in college football. Okay. So what's going to happen? I'm chicken or the egg. This is going to happen first. This isn't the first time this is going to happen. For the next 2 or 3 years, you will see outmatched teams in the first round of the playoff get blown out and make it very clear they didn't belong. Because there is, Dave, can you at least give me this? There's a giant gap between number 1 to number 6 and number 7 to number 12 in college football, right? It's not like college basketball where 1 through 12 is kind of.
No, I totally agree. I think if you're outside of the top 8-ish, you probably have no shot of winning a national championship, whereas you could be in the top 30 of the teams that make the basketball tournament and win it.
Exactly. And so that's what showed this weekend is that there were these teams in the 10 to 12 range did not belong. And what's going to happen is this. This is not the first time that's going to happen.
Okay, are you ready? Just tell me when you're ready for my argument. All
right, I'm ready for it. Just give me one more second. This is going to happen next year and the year after. And eventually teams that were watching the regular season out of excitement will stop watching because they'll know that even if they go to the playoff, they're going to get blown out and humiliated in the first round.
Okay, here's where we differ greatly. I think the level of college football is better than it's ever been before, and I think that's because of the transfer portal and NIL money. I believe that the talent is spread out over more programs than it ever has been before. For goodness sake, we were talking about UNLV having some huge NIL pickups, and we were concerned about them at one point this season. And I believe that Tennessee will continue to be one of the elite teams, maybe elite's too strong of a word, championship worthy teams for this foreseeable future, because I think the talent level is going to be pretty much spread out. I don't think you're going to see a Georgia or an Alabama dominate the way they have now that the NIL era. And this, for those that don't know, this is kind of the first year of really knowing what the NIL is and how to get things working. And it's going to go into institutional control, which will be even smarter. So I think Tennessee will continue to pound on the door. Now, the question I have, and it was on our message board, Mark Richt equal Josh Heupel. I can't answer that. I really can't. Like when Butch Jones was hired, I said I thought he would get Tennessee to 9 wins. I did not know if he would win double digits. I did not know if he would win a championship. With Josh Heupel, I honestly feel that he will win a championship, and he's knocking on the door, and he's not Mark Richt that'll win 10 games for 800 years. I don't believe he's that.
Okay, but my question to you, Dave, is do you think the talent will get spread out enough to an SMU could one day pull an upset in the first round of a playoff game?
I actually do. Yeah. Not this year, but yeah, I actually do. I think you have to do two things. This is what Tennessee tried to do this year. they tried to be really good in their top 22, right? Their first 22.
They did.
They rebuilt the defensive backfield. They did all that they need to do on the offensive line with Lance Hurd and spending money to get him. They took care of James Pierce. They did all that. But I still look at Josh Heupel as an elite coach because of how he was able to adjust in September when the deep passes weren't working nearly as often and into October, including the Oklahoma and Arkansas game. So I just don't see him slipping. And I will say this, when it comes to the college football playoff, I think you're going to see teams be closer. I actually think you'll see a 12 versus 5 or whatever it ends up being, 18 versus 1, be a tight, close game in 5 to 10 years. Not tomorrow, but in 5 to 10 years.
All right. So, well, I think Tennessee would always be there, even if there was not. And I think Tennessee in the earlier style of football could be there too. They've proven that. Here's where I could maybe get with you, but I'm having a hard time. I think the only way to really do this is you got to separate college football into tiers. You have to, if you're going to have this expanded playoff, you need to separate college football into tiers and maybe do a relegation model or something like that. But we're only a select group of teams from select conferences are allowed to participate in this playoff because these auto bids are just stupid. Now, we saw it over the weekend. SMU didn't belong. Arizona State's is going to prove they didn't belong. Boise State's going to prove they didn't belong. I mean, I get everybody didn't want Alabama in, but does anybody really believe that Alabama wouldn't have beaten SMU by 30 on a neutral field?
Probably. Last week brought to you by Doctors Campbell, Cunningham, and Hahn. So what would Caleb Calhoun do to change the college football playoff? I'll give you that and more after 15 seconds from Doctors Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn.
The first step to better vision is to visit ccteyes.com. The information you need is easy to access, and setting an appointment is as simple as clicking the tab. Doctors Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn, and Eye Care Optical at CCTI.
All right, Caleb, where do you see the college football playoff being in 5 to 10 years? I will say that it's 16 teams and that it's incredibly competitive from the top to bottom because I think NIL will spread it out. You just have to have – Tennessee was able to succeed this year because they didn't have too many injuries and they were talented on their top 22. They failed when they didn't have 23 to 85. That was where they struggled. Here's where I think college football's going. And here's my hope of where it's going. Because again, my wish is we would go back to 1990 and we had a bunch of 8-team, 10-team conferences and you just have a national champion picked at the end of the year. I thought college football was better that way. But this can't go in on that.
Matter
of fact, Peyton wants to weigh in on that.
They're like, that is total bullshit.
Thank you, Peyton.
Well, I don't care what Peyton thinks. Total bullshit. I, on the other hand, know that I am a realist. It's never going back. There's too much money being thrown around. My hope is that whenever the SEC and Big Ten break golf and form their own super league, I hope the other leagues that kind of form a conglomerate, I hope there becomes a relegation model like Premier League soccer, where you could play your way into the SEC and Big Ten, or you can play your way out. And then there's no conference. It's just a bunch of teams in the top league. They play each other and you just take the top 12.
So do you like that more than my Big Ten, SEC, AL, NL comparison?
Yeah, I like the no conference thing.
I do too, actually. The reason I laid that out there a few days ago was just as hopefully a stepping stone to get to what you're talking about.
Yeah,
no,
I'd rather just have
a mega conference with 36 teams.
Yeah, and then just randomly play 12. Just randomly play who you want to play. 12 game seasons, and you get rewarded on schedule. And then just take the top 12 teams, and the formula is the record and schedule strength. Call it a day. Get rid of auto bids. But this Hog Dog says I was 5 in 1990. No, actually I was 2 in 1990. So I was even younger, but I think I'm nostalgic for times before I was born. And I think college football was better before I was born, but that's just me.
All right. He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney. BanksandJones.com. Support our sponsors. That's why we're here. We greatly appreciate you. Hit the like and subscribe button. We will be off for a couple of days celebrating the holidays and celebrating Christmas. So I want to be sure and tell all of you guys how appreciated you are, how much we appreciate you being a part of the program, whether it's your messages in the chat or whether it's just being a part of the program. It means a lot, and continued growth here into 2024. So we're excited. For Caleb Calhoun, I'm Dave Hooker. This show has been represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com.